Hello, and welcome to the Earthly Roots podcast,
where we chat all things gardening, homesteading, and connecting to nature.
We're your hosts, Diane and Robyn.
The Earthly Roots podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today.
All right, let's get right into it.
All right.
The first episode.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I hope you're all excited to listen. This is definitely a long time coming. We've planned this for a while.
Yeah, but planned it without knowing that this is exactly what it was going to be. I think we both had an idea of a podcast as being the next step for us both, and it's just been really cool to connect it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think for me personally, a podcast has definitely been a dream for a while, but I haven't ever kind of had the steps or the know-how how to pull it all together. And I think you really need, or it's valuable to have someone else to talk to in a podcast. Yeah. We can just have conversations about things that we enjoy and find interesting. And I really love getting your perspective of everything, particularly more from like a homesteading and gardening point of view. Because I don't have a lot of that experience. So I think this can be a really interesting podcast.
I agree. I think we're going to have a lot of similarities, but a few differences as well. So it's going to be fun to explore that. But I guess we better introduce ourselves. So tell me, quick, snappy, who are you?
Well, my name is Robyn, and I am an environmental scientist and also a garden content creator, I suppose you would say. So I run The Nature Patch, which is both a YouTube channel and also an Instagram page. And I have always loved gardening, and I love chatting all things about gardening, growing my own food, following permaculture principles, and just kind of being outside. I really enjoy it. It makes me happy, and I love talking about everything to do with the garden and homesteading. So that's a little snapshot, I suppose.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah. What about you,
spill.
Diane?
So my name's Diane. I'm one part of Diane and Samson on YouTube. We're homesteaders here in Australia. We're down in New South Wales like yourself, which we actually just moved up here from Victoria, and we're doing all things gardening, raising livestock, building home, establishing roots, all those kinds of good things that keep us all wholesome.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a podcast is a great way to bring both of our interests together and to chat about subjects that we both have experience in. And I think it's also just a really good way to share with others that is a different media.
Yeah.
I know I personally love listening to podcasts just on drives and out in the garden. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be the same as well.
Yes.
Are you excited to have a little bit of a chat today? And
I am. I think this is just going to be a great chance to give you guys some inspiration, some food for thought, or just relate that we're all gardeners and we all go through problems, challenges, but also really incredible moments. And it's just going to be really fun to see how different or how similar our gardens are, but also those listening at home or watching the videos on YouTube, if that's where you are, they can see what's going on in our gardens and see what's going on in theirs and kind of reflect.
Yeah, because we're kind of in the same boat, really. We're both kind of starting from scratch, really, with our homesteading and gardening goals in terms of we're both learning how to grow food and being plants and animals as well. And
did your family ever homestead or have a farm?
No. So I never really, I grew up around a lot of gardens. Like my mum loves gardening, but we always moved around a lot. So I could never kind of, set my roots in one area and really make home everything that I want it to be. And a big part of that is having a really big garden. I really like to garden both for myself and for nature as well. It's a big part of why I like to garden, but I have a lot of learning to do and a lot of information that I can learn from others.
I think we're all in the same, like, what's the word? We're all in that stage as well. I feel like I talk to gardeners that have had gardens and homesteads for years and years, if not decades, and they're still feeling like they have more to learn and more to come across. Like, even with permaculture becoming such a big movement in the last, I think it's the last decade. I haven't researched it, but
definitely increased in popularity in the last decade or so, with I think the increase in social media and podcasting and videos to share this knowledge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the only way forward or the only method that people would use in their garden. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully we can have an episode where we're just delving into what permaculture really means to us and where you might see it or not see it in our gardens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are also starting an Instagram page as well. So we would love it if you would follow the Earthly Roots podcast over on Instagram. And this is a great way for you to connect with us and ask any questions that you might have about anything to do with gardening or homesteading that we can cover in the podcast.
Yes.
And we'll hopefully be able to share a little bit of behind the scenes on there, and also just some information or hot topics that we talk about throughout this podcast.
Yeah, or have chances to connect with you guys, get you answering some questions to help us out as well. It'll be, lots of fun. Grow this little community of ours.
Yeah. No, I think it'll be good. I had one question, which was, what made you kind of shift into this lifestyle of gardening and homesteading? I'm interested to hear what you say about that.
Well, similar to you, I didn't come from a background where my family were homesteaders or farmers or even really grew any food. I think the most my mum grew that I saw as a kid was strawberries.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wasn't quite aware of what homesteading really was for a very long time. And as I grew up, I think it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago with my partner Sam, we started like seeing people on YouTube homesteading. So the first person we saw was Justin Rhodes, and then we saw Roots and Refuge, and we found different people who were doing this homesteading movement. And it was interesting. And alongside that, we were watching a lot of documentaries like Cowspiracy and all those ones that really like put the fear into you of this is what your food system looks like. And I remember there was just a few moments in those documentaries where I was like, gosh, like what are we doing? Like why are we engaging in this? Why are we consuming meat that we don't really understand where it's coming from? And it's most likely grown in the most inhumane way. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to disconnect from that. And so we started taking these steps forward of like, how can we change what we're doing? And instead of going and relying on someone else and not knowing the background of what we're eating, why don't we start growing what we can? Why don't we start taking charge of what's in front of us so that, you know, we know that what we're eating is responsibly sourced and has a story for us to tell someone else. What about you? Like, what's moved you towards homesteading and gardening for yourself?
Yeah, I think it's more for me coming from an environmental scientist background. I'm just so kind of involved and aware of a lot of the environmental problems in the world and the impact that we as humans have on the landscape. So it takes, a bit of like an emotional toll on me doing environmental science.
I could imagine.
And I think I just felt like I really had to do something. And it is so overwhelming when you kind of look into gardening and homesteading and how you can really reduce your impact on the world. But I think just starting to grow your own food was the first thing that I looked into, because I really wanted to do something physically and make a change or a positive change in the world.
What was the first thing you grew?
The first thing I grew, I think
what did you start with? Because it can be so daunting to just begin.
I think I actually started with herbs because that is something very manageable, and that's something that I usually tell people to start with, because you can really create beautiful and delicious dishes with herbs, so
Well,
you can appreciate it.
Yeah, herbs go into just about anything you cook, and they make it so much better.
Yeah, and you don't need a lot of space for them as well. You can just grow them on your balcony, or even inside you can grow microgreens. Yeah. So yeah, I think I started with herbs, and I do remember growing radishes. Like, I love growing radishes because they are so quick to grow.
They are. Do they take 8 weeks or something?
I think even less than that. You can get some that are 4 weeks or so that are really, beautiful radishes. And I think a beautiful thing about growing food is being able to see something grow from a seed to then actually eat it. And, things like fruit trees are amazing and produce a lot, but witnessing the whole process of growing something from a tiny little seed to then something that you can actually eat and add to a salad is really magical. So that's probably what kind of got me hooked on gardening, was that I can take something so small and create something that is beneficial to myself and my health, but also reduces my impact on the environment. I was really just hooked, and then created the nature patch and everything.
I was going to say, there's such a disconnection from grocery food, or like even going to a farmer's market. I mean, you see the food there that you buy to then eat, but you don't see how it's grown. And so when you first start to garden, and I wonder if you had the same experience, like you put the seeds into the ground and you wait and you wait and you wait, and you learn the patience of gardening. Like it takes a long time to grow something, especially potatoes or garlic or onion, that can take upwards of 9 months. I think the first time I put garlic in and I realized it was 9 months, I was like, oh, that means I can't grow tomatoes there this season. Like, I have to wait. And so it means when you do get to finally harvest whatever it is that you planted, it's so much more rewarding.
Yeah, I think you really gain an appreciation for all of the farmers out there growing food, because I think farming is one of the hardest jobs, and is really one of the most important jobs as well, because we depend on farmers for our food, basically, unless you can grow food by yourself. For anyone who is watching, Annie, one of the cats, is moving around a little bit, so we've got some visitors joining us today.
Patter of feet.
Exactly, yeah. But it kind of rolls into maybe a question around food security and what that might mean to you, because I know I've seen on your YouTube channel and Instagram that you've started to talk a little bit more about it and start growing, a lot more food, particularly your meat. So what does food security mean to you, and is it really important to you?
Well, food security is the difference between, being able to sustain ourselves with the organic food that we grow on our property and having to sacrifice money at a shop to buy something that will never be the quality of what we can produce on our own farm. And that's not to say that I can't go to farmers markets, which is what we did when we first started moving towards this step in our life. But I think there's so little information of what is out there in shopping centers, especially, that it really does make me question everything that I'm looking at, and I just don't have that time to go around and question everything. So by growing our own meat, by growing our own vegetables, as I said before, not only do we know the story behind that food, and we're learning to be patient with how it's grown, and bug pressure is always going to bring things down, but learning exactly where it comes from and how it's produced allows us to really come up with strategies if things do go wrong. Yeah.
So do you also grow organic in your...
We do. So we don't spray anything in our gardens. I think the only thing that we introduce is seaweed solution, but I think that's all natural from my knowledge, which we do try to research everything that we are using in the garden beds, but wherever we can, we try to put things together. So we'll plant different vegetables together that will support one another. And I know if you've got a flower farm happening here, better than anyone the bug pressure that might come your way and some strategies for that.
Yeah, we're trying to start a flower farm here. It's our next kind of big venture, but the weather has been so horrible, which I would imagine might also impact the bug pressure when we can actually get plants in the ground. I think it's going to be interesting the next year or so with all of this rain that we've had to see what happens. But yeah, I think, and coming back to my environmental science background, like I love adding biodiversity into the garden. I think you can just really replicate a lot of what happens in nature and bring it into your garden. So things like companion planting and incorporating or encouraging as many bugs and animals into your garden.
Which we love bugs, don't we?
Oh, we do, but sometimes I would
types of bugs.
like to, have some broccoli or have my brassicas not completely eaten.
Yes.
And it just takes time. Growing a garden, again, you need patience to grow the food, but you also need patience to be able to grow a garden, which in itself can take years to really flourish and thrive. Because when you're starting out and planting things, you're creating an imbalance in the ecosystem that is already there. And by incorporating biodiversity and things like that and different plants and working with nature, you can definitely, balance that a little bit more. And that's really important to me. I'm
curious. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you, but where did you learn that? Like, where did you get the information of the importance of incorporating companion plants, or like what have you done to support yourself in that?
Yeah, well, I think it's just in a lot of my background also in science. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Geography, and that was what I majored in, and then did honours and worked in mining environments. So I looked at rehabilitating mines, and that is one of the hardest things to do, is to take a bare piece of land and turn it back into something productive. And I've seen so many failed mine sites and failed sites, all because a lot of the time they had either monoculture or they were just focusing on one thing, like planting plants and not looking at the soil. So,
and is that just a lack of knowledge, or?
Yeah, but also funding. And I mean, a lot of times it's a business trying to do the best they can. And a lot of times we just don't know what happens. Nature really controls the garden and everything. But I did learn that the more biodiverse things are, the better in terms of establishing gardens and establishing native ecosystems, because that also really helps to encourage, if you have different plants in the ground, to encourage different things happening below the soil. And soil is super important. But yeah, other than that, I think it's really reflected in permaculture principles. So I haven't done any kind of permaculture courses.
Neither. We're too cheap in our household to do them.
I think there's a lot of information online.
And that's and the power of permaculture and gardening as well. And you learn a lot of the things that you researched, and a lot of the things that, for example, you're exposed to in the mines, you're learning about even more because you're seeing it in person and you're experiencing it. And I think there's a lot of power in actually getting your hands into the ground, planting something and seeing how it goes, like noticing that there's going to be more bugs in springtime and summertime that are going to eat your brassicas than there is during the cold seasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it just takes time as well to just get out there and learn yourself. And observing, which is a permaculture principle, is really important. To observe what happens over the 4 seasons, or however many seasons you kind of have in your area, is really important, because there's so much value in just taking time back and just looking at what happens.
I'll be honest though. I wasn't patient enough to wait. I observed, and don't get me wrong, I still continue to observe, but that need to just get out into that garden, I think, stopped me from observing enough.
Yeah, and that's where human nature comes in, because we're not really patient when it comes down to it. We want the food like now. We want to go and get it.
Yes, if only it was that easy to disconnect from the system and have your own food just there, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you have anything kind of coming up? Are you excited about anything? Because I know you've got lots of things going on with Diane and Samson.
Yes.
What are you most excited for in the coming months?
Oh, that's really hard. We have so many things coming up, but we're actually getting a bus tomorrow. I think that's probably the thing I'm most excited for. So for those that know us and those that might not, we are trying to be as self-sufficient as we can. And as part of that journey, we want to build a home. But we haven't been able to find a way to build a home that not only is sustainable on our finances, but is also sustainable in the materials that we use for the home. So it's been 7 years in this journey of food security, but also trying to figure out what home will one day look like for us. And we thought we had a plan and we were going to go with a yurt, and we moved up to this area because this is where we wanted to be. This is where we felt most connected to the land, and it had everything that we felt like we needed in our lives. But as soon as we moved up here, of course, the marketing crisis happened. And so we've decided now, instead of letting it defeat us, instead of letting our goals not move forward, we're going to get a bus, we're going to get a shell, and we're going to convert it into a tiny home on wheels, which is really funny because it comes full circle. 7 years ago, Sam and I, when we first started going towards this movement, we were looking up tiny houses.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, but I'm talking tiny houses like the trailer on the back of the car, travel
Which are
around
very
Australia.
tiny, very small.
Yes, they
I feel
are.
like a bus is a good size.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's actually huge inside. Like I go in there and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can have a kitchen and a bathroom and a bedroom, and I can put a kid's bedroom up there for when I have children one day.
Exactly.
All the things.
And you can actually move it around a little bit easier.
Yeah. So it's really funny that 7 years ago we had this one idea, but it took us 7 years of learning, trying, living to eventually come to this one point where we found the thing we want to pursue as far as housing goes. So super excited to do that and see where the journey takes us and all the learning we're going to get from that. Yeah. So what about you? What's exciting in your life?
Well, we are starting the flower farm from scratch. I don't have a horticultural background or anything like that, but I am super excited to start the flower farm because I've always wanted to start some kind of market garden or backyard business, I suppose. And we're on a decent sized block here. It's about half an acre or so, and it's the right size to be growing flowers to make it kind of like a viable business.
Yeah. So where will your business go? Like, what do you foresee if everything goes well, the flowers grow beautifully, you get to actualize your goals? What are those goals going to be?
Well, I'd love to have a market stall. Like, I'd love to sell bouquets for markets. I also would just like to share the journey on YouTube as well, because I think it's really valuable for a lot of other people who are thinking about starting a backyard business or wanting to grow flowers or food, just to like share the information, the highs and lows, because there's a lot of lows. And I think we need to more like normalize that a little bit more, about normalizing failure. And it's been really hard to start.
What's been the hardest? The rain, or is there more to it?
The rain, and trying to think of it more as a business.
Yeah.
I don't naturally have a business mind frame, I suppose. Like, I have more of a science environmental mind frame, which is very kind of conservative in that I don't want to use too many seeds or grow too many things. But in a business, I literally have to be doing that.
Yeah.
I have to grow
You
as
throw
much
all
as
the
I can.
seeds down.
Yeah, and then cut it all and then sell it, and then I don't see it anymore. So I'm trying to move towards, changing my mind frame a little bit because, I'm not just a homestead here or a garden and growing our own food. We're trying to make a bit of a business because, we love staying at home, and I want to be at home and enjoy, family and friends coming here, and so that's
which in a way
exciting.
is why I'm sure both of us have started doing YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of fun in building a community and getting to share with our friends and family, but at the end of the day, if you're starting a YouTube channel, you're doing it because you want to grow a business. You want to inspire people. You want to share something with the world, whether it be educational or entertainment. And it's really a way to move forward in being able to be at home more and, you know, work from home.
Yeah. And I feel like you're definitely on the way to doing that, because I feel like
So are you.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, your partner, he's at home now. He can put a little bit more time into the homestead and creating content, which would be really valuable to grow your business as well. Yeah. Has that been hard for you though? Because if you're working
like
full-time,
switching to a business mindset, or what do you mean?
Yeah, or just so you're a teacher and you work full time at the moment, and Sam is doing some more of the homesteading side of things and video content creation. How's that been to kind of switch from, you know, moving towards a little bit more like that rather than what most of us do, which is just, you know, the 9 to 5, changing our lifestyle a little bit?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's actually been something that we've worked slowly towards. So back when we lived in the suburbs of Melbourne, I was studying to be a teacher and Sam was working. We've both kind of always worked part-time or casually. Neither one of us has ever had the mindset that we wanted to be full-time in a job for the rest of our lives, which is kind of why we've moved towards this homesteading lifestyle, because we want to be in control of what's happening. And when you're working for someone else, you don't have that control. You don't get to be at home living the lifestyle you want. So once I finished my teaching degree and I started being a teacher, I was full-time for the first 2 years, and it allowed Sam to be part-time and studying as well for various different things. And then when we moved up here, once again, we were both doing part-time work so that we had that balance between being on the homestead, establishing our business, which is Diane and Samson, but also Sam's a musician, so having that flexibility of time to pursue his music. I continued to teach, and then we just found that it worked better if one of us was at home more often. And while I enjoyed being at home and I enjoyed making the videos and homesteading, and then part-time working as a teacher, I felt like I was kind of half myself in both the things. So I wasn't able to fully commit myself to just the one thing. And when I was homesteading, I wasn't strong enough to do certain things. Like
hard work.
One of my favorite moments is me trying to carry a trailer full of compost from our pig's pen over to our new garden beds. And I'm like carrying this trailer, this little girl trying to record it all along as well. And this thing's heavy. I could hardly move it. And our property has so many hills and slopes. It is not straight. And so I'm carrying this trailer down the road and it gets to a point where it starts going from like a flat line to like a very slight slope. It's just getting harder and harder to hold it. And it came to a moment where like I had to just jump out of the way because the trailer was coming at me like full speed. And like crashed into the house, made a massive hole.
Ooh,
like, have I shown it to you yet? I'll have to show it to you next time. It's horrific.
I feel like YouTube does not know this story.
No. But yeah, so it just showed me in that moment that there's limitations to what I can do when I'm on the homestead, especially by myself, which that's not me saying like, you know, boys are stronger and girls are weak and so boys should be on the homestead. It's more so me being realistic that my strength as a teacher is to work full time and bring in an income that can sustain our business while it's growing. And Sam's strengths is in building and establishing things that I can then come over and make pretty.
Yeah.
You know? So is that similar with you and Scott where you guys kind of have your roles to play?
Yeah, although I feel like it's opposite for us. Not the whole strength thing. He's definitely a lot bigger. I tend to leave things around the yard, like bags of compost and things like that, and he can come and pick them up at a later time.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, just leave him jobs here, there, and everywhere. But I feel like he is definitely, his strength is supporting a lot of what my dreams and my goals are. Yeah. And that's something as, you know, our relationship has developed, we've had to really learn how to hold back on, and really decide and understand what our strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And I'm such a goal-driven person. If I want to do something, I will end up doing it.
So you're the ideas man. Like,
exactly.
You're like, this is what we're working towards.
Yeah.
Or what I want to do.
Yeah, and I've always been like that. I've always had goals and dreams, and Scott is really great at supporting that. Well, also he has his hobbies and things that he likes to do as well, but he currently, is working full-time, and I have a little bit more of a casual part-time position so that I can focus on things like YouTube and the Nature Patch and the flower farm and keeping myself busy because, I love being busy.
Yeah.
And I can't stop. I feel like we're both
you're so busy. I feel like you have so much on your plate that even just us wanting to podcast together, I'm like, are you sure you have time? Like,
no.
Will you be okay?
This is something I wanted to do for a long time, and
no, I love it. I'm glad that you're up for it. So let's really deep dive in.
Okay, yeah.
Why YouTube?
Why YouTube? Well, I actually hate listening back to myself and watching myself, so it's definitely interesting and not what I thought I was going to do. I really don't like editing myself, but I do love sharing, and I love like education and teaching people. And I think I was reaching out for that as well, in terms of I was looking for Australian content creators about gardening and trying to relate to my climate, because we used to live west of Brisbane, and it was super dry, really hot. We didn't have like the typical 4 seasons. It was just totally different to everything that I was watching online, even some of the Australian creators. We didn't get all of, the beautiful autumnal seasons and things like that. And
because a lot of them are based in Victoria. Or,
down south where it's a little bit more populated. And that's super, super great for people that live down there. But just none of it was relating to me. And I felt just like there was a missing gap. And just wanted to start filming what I was doing, so that mainly my mum as well, she could see what I was doing, because she loves gardening and watching the videos.
Hi, Mum.
Hi. But I think just the gap in like the education and YouTube area, I really wanted to start that, and also just building community. Like, if I didn't do YouTube, I wouldn't have met you and Samson and lots of other amazing creators that we can now come together and actually, provide a little bit more content that might be applicable to people around Australia and the world. And just make a positive impact, I suppose.
I was literally going to say that I felt that same kind of drive when we wanted to start the YouTube channel. Like, I always knew that the YouTube channel in some way would connect to working from the land and being on a homestead. And then when I started researching into it, I found that a lot of the people and the demographic on YouTube didn't relate to me. So they weren't living in the same places as I was. They weren't the same age or going through the same life stages as me. And so when I saw your face, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she's got brown hair like me. She looks like she's just about the same age. And I think we are the same age.
Yeah, I'm 27.
Yeah, so am I.
Oh, cool.
So like,
very similar.
Exactly. And so even when we talk about like our plans and our goals and our lifestyle, there's so much we have in common, which I think has really helped us to connect and establish all that we're doing together, but also is that gap that both of us were missing until this point.
Yeah.
But now we're the only ones, so.
But like, I do love all of the other creators and, the Justin Rhodes and Roots and Refuge, because that's also where I started watching that kind of content. And like, wow, that's so amazing that there's such a big community over in the US and
there's so
Europe.
much they can teach us because they have done it for so long.
Yeah, and I think it just needs a little bit of tweaking to be more of an Australian context, because we just don't have the resources like America and
the money.
Northern Hemisphere does. It's totally different, and our growing conditions are extreme. Like the drought in some areas of Australia versus the amount of rain we're getting.
The
I
winds.
know, it's crazy everywhere in the world, but having more different areas to be available on YouTube, and podcasting and experiences just makes you feel like you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So if you can relate to someone like that, and yeah, I think it's just YouTube is such a great opportunity for that.
Yeah. And what I love is that, like you said, there's a lot that we can learn from older YouTubers or from those that have already established homesteads or farms. But there's also a lot that we can learn from those that are younger than us. I heard this thing once where you should befriend someone who's 10 years older than you and 10 years younger than you, so that you can really gain perspective from all those different life stages. And like we all see the world so differently and we experience it differently, and who are we to say that this is the perfect age to talk to and learn from? There's a lot that we can take from everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of which, did you have any kind of inspiration from like your family to start gardening at all, or do you have like a grandma or anything that you have kind of fond memories of gardening as you were growing up?
No, so I actually grew up in Israel. Wow. I don't know if I've ever shared that with you, but and as far as what a garden would look like in Israel, we were surrounded by dust.
Wow.
So we weren't exactly in a desert, and there were trees. Don't get me wrong, there's trees, there's plants. But when I looked outside of my window, all I saw was dirt and dust and concrete, and that's about it, and houses. So I don't have any memory of gardening or my family gardening. When we moved to Australia, I remember my mum trying to get me out in the garden to help her like with weeding and stuff. And as a like teenager, like the last thing you want to do is help your mum weed the garden.
Exactly. Totally not cool.
No. I'd help you weed the garden, and I have.
Yeah.
But back then I was like, oh, I'm not going outside to do that. Like, are you going to pay me? No, well then I'm not doing it. I'm going to go play with my friends or sit on the computer. And so, like this whole idea, I think it was more so that Sam came from a background of his family were farmers. They were dairy farmers originally. And he grew up in these beautiful areas in Victoria, like Warrnambool and the Gippslands. So surrounded by nature. And he, similar to you, is the ideas man in our relationship. So he'd come up with the idea, and then I would find out a way to make it happen because I would go for it. And so along the journey to gardening, I actually did find out that my grandma used to raise chickens.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if she grew her own veggies, but she used to, have her own chickens. And same with Sam's Oma, had the same kind of story. But it all stopped when it came to like my mum and dad's generation. That seems to be the spot where things changed in the world.
That's kind of the same with mine. Like my Oma and Upa, who we live in their house right now, and part of the garden down the lower end of the house, of the property, used to be their veggie patch. And there's just so many worms and activity down there, but they were really heavy on growing their own food. And it's really special because I have photos of what it used to look like and the produce that used to come out of this garden, which was amazingly big heads of cauliflower and broccoli. And my Uma loves flowers, which is also inspiration to start the flower farm. But then it kind of did stop with my parents as well. Like they do like gardening and like being outdoors, but I think the urgency to grow your own food kind of stopped a little bit with that generation, or at least that's my experience.
Well, convenience became more prominent, and I think like our grandparents worked so hard to grow their own food that when convenience became an option, they pushed their children to that, because all parents want the best for their children.
Yeah,
and
because
we can all understand that.
Growing food is super hard. Like, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and I don't blame people.
It's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and nature is its own force, and you can't help what happens. And we are so privileged and lucky that we don't have to garden this day and age. We have food available, or at least, in a lot of countries we do. Still a lot of work to do in a lot of other countries to make that available. But we are very privileged in that, we can also help relieve the system by growing our own food and making, the positive impacts that we want to make.
Yeah. And inspiring others and just helping to show that we all make mistakes and that it's not easy and there's a lot of hard work and grit that goes into it. There's sometimes tears and there's doubt in yourself of, is this the right choice? Is this going to work out? Am I putting in all this hard work for nothing to have some broccoli leaves, or am I actually going to get the head?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have not had luck with broccoli, so that's hard hitting right now.
I'm so sorry. Ours isn't going too well either.
No, but I think this will be really cool because we can talk about these things on this podcast and just sit down, and hopefully it'll be relatable to a lot of people listening. And we'd love to hear your stories about all the topics that we talk about. So, connecting with us on Instagram and YouTube and, following our own journeys as well. I think it's going to be super interesting, and I'm very excited for some of the topics that we're going to be talking about.
Do you want to give juicy ones?
Yeah. Do you want to give a sneak peek on some of the things on what we might talk about?
Well, I'd love to explore sustainability more. I think that's something that I've been really passionate about and has been a driving force in a lot of things that I do. So that would be a cool thing to get some perspective on from you. Yeah. But I really want to deep dive into your diet. So I want
diet.
I mean, because Sam and I are meat eaters. From the very beginning, we knew we wanted to continue eating meat, and so we made steps to make that a sustainable thing for us, and something that was healthy for us as well. But I know that you have mainly a plant-based diet, so I'd love to I actually, my best friends are vegan and vegetarian, and so it's not something that I'm not exposed to. It's not something that I have a negative affiliation with. I actually really respect it, and I think that it can in some ways be a lot harder than just raising your own meat. Yeah. But I'm sure you might disagree with that, or
So. I mean, we are so totally open to whatever diet preferences people have, and it's probably going to be something that'll push me out of my comfort zone, because sometimes I have felt attacked for my decisions and things like that. But it's it's not coming from people like you or anything like that. It's more coming from people who aren't willing to have a conversation about it
or to research it.
And I think there's facts that we can have about why you want to make a decision, but there's also personal preferences, and that's the beauty of homesteading and gardening, is that you can really do whatever you want to do, and
you're in control.
Exactly. And there's no pressure to you can be fully sustainable, but something that I probably like to cover in the podcast is little manageable things that we can do as a collective and as society to make positive environmental change, because we can get caught up with all of the pressure and horrible things happening in the world and feeling like we have to do everything to change things. But I really love to bring it down a little bit and be a bit more manageable in, how you can become a little bit more sustainable rather than being 100% sustainable, or, things like that. So I think it'll be good to, because we both have the, different diets and different interests, hopefully it'll appeal to at least, some of the audience, and people might have different opinions and things like that.
But even still, I really enjoy that. Taking the really big picture can almost be too overwhelming for people to just take a step forward in whatever direction that may be, and know that there's different ways to approach that big issue and the big thing that we all want to solve. So that'll definitely be a good topic to break down more.
We can't all be David Attenborough
and
save the world.
But we can try.
We can try, and we will try.
I talked right to my microphone. It's going to we're going to get used to this.
Cool. Well, I think maybe we could wrap up soon, or do you have any more burning questions that you want to ask, or?
Not for the moment. I think I hope that we've given you guys listening an understanding of who we are, and I hope you've enjoyed just listening to us kind of vent about different things, or discover more about each other and our past and how we got from the conventional 9-to-5 job or living in a suburb, going to the supermarket to buy things, to slowly making our way to working from home, working for ourselves, being in control of what we're growing food-wise for ourselves as well.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of encapsulates the name of the podcast as well, which I'm not sure if we fully touched on why we chose that name, but it kind of does encapsulate the whole environmental side of what we're doing with, you know, earthly roots, and also growing things with roots, but also, you know, growing things from home and having, you know, a solid foundation for what you truly want to do in life, whether that be down the gardening or homesteading route, which will kind of be the overarching theme of the podcast.
Yes.
Because that's, you know, what we're both passionate about. But we'll definitely be covering like super different topics of, you know, sustainability, diets, planting, composting, all the amazing things.
Yeah. So if you guys have any like burning desires of topics that you might want us to talk about, or if there are any suggestions, like feel free to leave us a review. You can find us on YouTube at The Nature Patch, Diane and Samson. You can find us on Instagram, also Earthly Roots Podcast on all those devices on all of those different platforms too. We really want to be building this connection and feel like we're having a conversation all together, even though it is just the two of us talking.
Yeah, any input and reviews and comments is definitely welcomed, because
it's always fun.
Yeah, it's cool to build this community, and I know people from our YouTube channels will probably be listening, so shout out to you.
Yes.
But also just any new people who are listening, like we'd love to know, you know, where you're from, why, you know, you started gardening or homesteading, just a little bit about your story, and maybe we can have like a Q&A kind of segment as we get going.
I'd love that.
Yeah, after a few episodes, to answer 1 or 2 or 3 questions that people ask. I feel like that'd be really fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and I guess we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening and watching. Bye, guys.